Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We saved the best for last.
Oh.
The communications leaders panel, going to talk about what's actually happening with Investor Days. My name's Lex Suvanto, CEO of Edelman Smithfield. Here with me, Jen Lowney, Global Head of Communications for Citi. Will Dunn, Global Head of Communications at Aon, and Lauren Schulz, Chief Communications Officer at CRH. So we're going to talk about communications aspects of the Investor Days. And I'm going to start off with, give us an overview of a quick overview of your Investor Days, just so we can set the context. Jen, do you want to start?
Sure. I think over the course of the conversation, I'll talk about two different Investor Days we did. We did one 5 years ago. That was the first one since our current CEO became CEO. She announced a strategy refresh, and that was a real reset for the company. And then we did a smaller one just 2 years ago, which was a deeper dive into one key business.
So you had the big, wholesome, fulsome Investor Day, and then you had a division-specific Investor Day after that. Well,
great. And then for Aon, it was our first, we did it in June, our first Investor Day in 20 years. 20 years is about as long as our CEO has been there. So he kind of arrived, did an Investor Day, which was something that was standard for us. And then we had the arrival of our CFO about a year before. And as a consequence, with a new leadership team and actually a new plan for our firm that sort of took us to 2026, felt like this was a good time for us to get out there and really tell our story.
Well, we just did ours a few days ago, so it's very fresh.
You're here to live. You've lived to tell about it.
I'm still alive. Yeah, I've got some bruises, but no, it was wonderful. We just did ours last week. We had a full, full enterprise level, over 200 investors attending. With the new CEO as well. So our CEO has been in office for about 9 months. And it was, it was fabulous.
So another quick question for all of you. Your role, so the communications department doesn't always have the same exact role. Lauren, it was so much fun to see you on stage at the event. You opened the event. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But give an overview of the role that your team played for the event.
So CRH is fairly new to the New York Stock Exchange. We moved our primary listing to the U.S. just around 2 years ago. So we did one smaller Investor Day the day of listing. This was our first real big Investor Day, and the role of the communications and the IR team has been evolving over the last 2 years in particular. And so it's a small team. It's a very close-knit team. The IR team and the comms team, we share an office here in New York. The rest of our organization is a bit more dispersed. So I would say the IR team, they wrote the strategy, they wrote the messaging. We collaborated together on the flow and the outline and the design of the day. They managed all of the content, and then the comms team came in and helped refine the messaging. So there was several different parts to the Investor Day with different parts of the business presenting and talking about the strategy. We unveiled our growth algorithm, we unveiled our business system, and so the role of the comms team was the experience, the visual identity, from the second that you walk into the door, helping the executives that were presenting sharpen their presentation skills, but the most important, I think, was the streamline of messaging. So we had, one part of the organization focused on our performance, another on our growth, another on our business units of the way that the business is organized. But the comms team was able to look at all the different aspects of the business and say, okay, well, you're saying it this way, you're saying it this way, why don't we all say it this way? So the messaging and the streamline and the alignment of the words that we were using, the way that the delivery came across was the comms team very, very closely aligned with the IR team. The IR team led the day. It was their responsibility. We were in a supporting role. But it was great to see it all come across, and thanks to AI now, we put in all of our investor messaging, all of the scripts and the transcripts of the day, asked it, what were the themes? And then we put all the analyst notes and the media coverage and said, what are the themes? And thank God it was the same. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have showed it with anybody. But I was like, wow, look at this, everyone. Like, the messaging that we wanted to deliver was clear, it was concise, it was coordinated, and it resonated. And this is what people were saying back to us. So I think it was really the messaging alignment was my favorite part, but led by IR.
Great. Will, what about your role and also the partnership or whether there was with IR team?
Well, gratefully, I was not on stage, so Lauren did the heavy lifting there. But I think
My role on stage was to tell everyone where the emergency exits were and what the agenda was.
You did it very well.
I did it very well, yes.
That's hilarious. You know, they didn't trust me with that. But I think what we were there to be was, I talked about a new team. So we had a CFO that was about a year into the job, and some new colleagues that come in around him, enormously talented, knew what they were doing, had done investor days before, but not for Aon. And so we were responsible, you know, my team oversees both internal and external comms. And so we were the voice of the colleague or the voice of the media. And we were thinking about, throughout the process, how do we get colleagues really excited about this before the day, and then how do we use the artifacts that came out of it afterwards with colleagues, with clients, and then of course how do we get as much coverage out of it as we could. And then your point about kind of telling the story, the investor team, and would just shout out Elsa and Hallie and Nicole, who did a phenomenal job on that, would come to us often to check in around, like, does this sound like Aon? Is this the way that Aon would say this? Because there were definitely new spins or new ways, exciting ways of talking about our firm and our strategy, but it had to be authentically us. And so there were a lot of times where they were checking in on the content just to make sure that it was, you know, singing as Aon does. So that was our role in the process.
Jen?
Yeah, I mean, similar in many respects. I'd say we worked really closely with our IR team and the head of strategy, who helped put the presentations togetger. We did the scripting for the most part for
Your
our
team
executives.
handled the scripting for speakers.
Wow.
Fantastic.
I mean, obviously, we held the pen, and then we worked closely in partnership with strategy and IR on that, but we were crafting the scripts. In addition to everything everyone talked about, we also did a pretty robust media strategy in the lead up to Investor Day. So we had a 3 to 6 month window of objectives where we were getting our executives out there to meet and greet reporters, briefing them on what their businesses were and where they were headed. In the month before Investor Day, we did more in-depth, embargoed interviews with our CFO and some of our business heads to really help them understand what strategy points we would be making at Investor Day per line of business, so that on Investor Day, really what the goal was for media was then to put it all together and see it tied in a bow. But they weren't trying to understand for the first time what we were doing with each of our businesses and what the growth priorities were.
So you were doing basically desk side briefings about the content, about the strategy, well ahead of the Investor Day, so that reporters knew what they were going to hear about.
Exactly, and then they saw it presented in its entirety, not with numbers, but the strategy, and then the numbers came to fruition on Investor Day. I mentioned to you yesterday that our strategy for media on the day of, we have beat reporters who cover either only Citi or Citi and one other bank. So there was a high degree of media interest. We had, I should say, our last big Investor Day was in 2022, and we were all ready to do it live. And the weekend before, one of our senior business leaders and our CFO got COVID. So we had to move it to a virtual event, which was a pretty big pivot.
How many days ahead of the event did you make the switch?
So our event was on a Tuesday. We made the call on a Saturday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, the Saturday before. So that was a lot of fun and excitement. But we had planned to have 10 reporters there. They were all given access to join virtually, which they would have anyway. But rather than do any interviews on the day of, our strategy was deliberate in that we planned a broadcast interview for our CEO the day after. And we wanted the day of strategy and the messaging and all of those scripts to really speak for themselves and to tell the story day of. And depending on the reaction to that, we had the follow-up day to either lean into the good, which thankfully is what happened, or if there was something that wasn't resonating or where we had to course correct, we had that opportunity with the CEO the next morning.
The press release. We'll come back to media. A lot more to talk about there. The press release. What were each of your strategies with regard to the press release? When did you put it out? Did it include material information, the financial guidance in it? Will, do you want to start with that?
Happy to. So let me take us back even just so ours was June 9th was our investor day, and on our earnings just before that was at the end of April. And so at the end of April during our investor call, we announced that we were having the day. And that gave us a chance then to send out invites and to start working our media relationships and our investor and analyst relationships. Then a month before the day, we released a press release with the webcast for it, and a bit of a preview in terms of what the messaging would be. And I think unique to this time that we were in was it was not long after the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO, and so we never at any point released publicly where the actual event would be, which I think is probably now standard. And then the morning of, we released a press release that had more of the messaging, not any financial information.
Prior to the event starting.
Prior to the event starting.
Lauren, what about your day of press release?
Very similar. We had announced the event a couple months prior during our earnings just before. We talked about it. It was part of the script. And then the morning of, we put out a press release. The press release went out around 7 a.m., a little earlier. It did have that we were reaffirming guidance and some other financials with our targets, which got picked up by media, of course. It was very short. But it was perfect timing. We didn't include the slides or the presentation. We posted that to our website just before the event. So we wanted to give a little bit to garner some attention and interest with media, and then the whole presentation was posted just before the event on the microsite that we had developed. But we had a quote from the CEO that was talking about the strategy and the whole essence of the investor day, the things that we were going to be talking about that were new, in addition to the guidance and the targets that we were going to put out.
Did you have more or less the same
No,
approach?
similarly, we had built a microsite and we really had a light press release that drove traffic.
Before the event started?
Yes, we posted all the presentations the morning of.
That seems to be the best practice.
Yeah.
Now is to put the press release out even with material information before the event starts. Years ago, the people would hold it until after it came out of the CFO's mouth.
But I think what Jen said there is, like I hope everyone appreciates, is that the press release is not the communications. I mean, the work was being done with pre-briefings and making sure our media really understood the importance of what we were going to communicate. And so the press release was kind of a way of announcing to the world what our theme was, which was a powerful platform for growth. And some information about the event. Otherwise, we were doing the work on content behind the scenes.
So let's get into media. Starting, Lauren, just last week, it was fantastic. You were able to attract a couple of reporters to the event, and you had a somewhat unique approach to the initial broadcast interview. Want to give an overview of your media strategy?
Sure. With a lot of help from Jack, who's here in the audience, and Lex and the whole team at Edelman, we worked on a pretty robust media strategy, a bit aspirational. We reached for the stars for sure. We started with a live interview with Fox Business the week prior. So our CEO went on the Claimant Countdown to start seeding the excitement about the Investor Day. And she's wonderful. If you ever want to bring your CEO on, I highly recommend. Worked really nicely with her team and the producer of the show to make sure we could talk about the Investor Day. And then we planned a pre-record with CNBC. So very early in the morning, there's the Worldwide Exchange with Frank Holland. And he came to our location, which was also, I would highly recommend, Quorum by Convene in Midtown. And we had everything set up. We had this, so we do building materials, roads, concrete. I mean, everything that goes into infrastructure is the company that is CRH. So we had this massive, I don't even know what to call it. Model of a road. Yeah. And we were like, man, wouldn't this be great to get this thing on TV? Frank was super amenable to it. We did an 11-minute interview with Frank and our CEO the day before that went out at 6 o'clock in the morning. So even before the press release, we didn't talk about numbers, and Frank was great about that too. We held that until we gave, just till when the press release went out. But we pre-recorded, and then that interview went out at 5:30 or 6 a.m. that morning, and then was repurposed on CNBC the whole day. There were clips, it went on YouTube, there were portions of it, and it was our whole summary of our strategy that we were going to be talking about on stage with the investors.
So that was a pre-record.
That was a pre-record.
Which isn't that common. It was great that they agreed to it.
Yeah.
That made it easier for you.
Yeah.
And one might argue that the early time slot may not be the perfect time slot,
Right.
but then they reran it throughout the
They
day.
ran it throughout the day. And, CNBC is a great, great place to go. We had one of their analysts that we had been talking to the whole summer about CRH who covered us. We invited him. Never met him before. He came on. He knew Frank.
CNBC analyst.
CNBC analyst, yep. Frank had him on the show. One of our analysts was also on Frank's show, so she was talking about it. She was at the event. And then that CNBC analyst talked about it our whole day. He was like, oh, I was just at the day. I was at the CRH's Investor Day. I mean, we were covered for like 4 or 5 days after. And Frank, this one woman analyst, and Jim Leventhal were like, oh yeah, I was there. You were there. Like we talked about it. I was with like it was just awesome to have this, trio of conversations about our Investor Day.
Jim Leventhal is one of those stock picker analysts on CNBC that companies often wonder, how do we get in front of them?
Right.
And so that's a really unique tactic.
Yeah.
Will,
We also had we had a lot of print come, so we were able to get some. We don't have beat reporters yet. I'm working on it. Jack is working on it for me.
Might be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Exactly. But we were able to get some of our friendlies to come to the day too. Did have one, and I won't name the outlet, who we invited, who we know, and his response was, "I have no time for this. I'm not going to be doing your company's bidding. Thanks, but no thanks." A tier 1 outlet, right? And
What does it rhyme with? Can you tell us?
It's 3 letters.
well, you
And that's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'd say, so we have what we call trade publications, and of course beat reporters within the major top tier outlets. I think the thing I was thinking most about in preparing for this was just don't start the strategy when you think about the investor day. I mean, you need to be, and hopefully with the support of Edelman, really active on your media strategy, and it served us when we got to this big milestone. And maybe one of the things we did was we were a little quieter around the earnings prior, so that we weren't out there as much then, so we could kind of save those opportunities a little bit for what would happen a couple months later. But we really focused on all the elements that any of us in the room would around ensuring that we had broadcast coverage and using our executives to land, multiple. So we had CNBC in the room and then covered us after the day. So at the end of the day, our CEO, fortunately still in the job, but we drove all the way out into New Jersey and did a live interview at the end of a very long day. And then the next morning, our CEO appeared on Yahoo Finance, and then in the afternoon, after close, our CFO appeared on the close show on Bloomberg TV. So kind of 3 broadcast hits. And then from a print perspective, the Wall Street Journal came out first in the morning ahead of the investor day with an interview with our CFO and subsequent interviews in the FT, in Barron's. And I think the big thing for us was, we had been saving up a lot of the Andy Sewer interview with Barron's. We were kind of waiting for the right moment, and we used the investor day to capitalize on that. And I would just say, like, everything in your toolbox, go and pursue it. And the reality, as I said to Lex, as we were just talking backstage, was just, if you'd asked me 10 days before, would it all land? I would have said no. Like, now it looks like a real success, but it was because we put a lot on the table and we reserved that space to do it. And then we had a number of, trade for us is really big, and so we knew we were going to get great trade coverage, but we made it very clear to them that this was really important to us, and got kind of wall-to-wall coverage from them.
You had an interesting idea with one of your trade reporters for
one of the ideas, and I really need to give credit to Elsa Ballard, who at the time was serving as one of our lead investor relations people was the idea of having one of our trade publications does a broadcast interview series, video series, and we had them kind of do interviews with all of the presenters who went on stage live. So it's called Insurer TV, and we placed them at the bottom of the stairs that led up to our room. And the idea was that could we capture some excitement that the analysts and investors would see of like, oh wow, this is really going to reach outside of this room and experience that we have. And I don't know if we had the analysts here whether they would say that they are influenced by or moved by that, but we thought it was a really interesting way to kind of bring a little bit of visible media energy to the space, because otherwise we had a media area that people were sitting in, and we wanted that to look full for most of the day, but you don't really see the coverage there, and our executives were busy. And so the idea that they would be taking time away from the main audience there of analysts and investors during that period, we really held that space for them and focused on the beginning and the end and the pre-briefings.
Jen, Citi's a big brand. You've got a lot of media following. You did a big investor day. You did a division focused. What did media look like for you?
Yeah, I think I got a little ahead of myself in speaking about the media for the big investor day before. But I agree with the point of, there's a lot of work that goes in ahead of time, even when we did our business focused one. So it's our services business, payments, it's Citi's distinguishing factor amongst other banks in terms of our global network and how we help, Apple, Uber move money around the world. So the rationale for that, by the way, is a business that really is unique to Citi in terms of the number of countries that we can help connect. And we had received investor feedback over the years that we didn't talk it up enough, right? It was just sort of thought about as the pipes. But really a lot of technology and infrastructure goes into that. That's the business now that's really pushing the agenda for stable coins and digital currency. And there wasn't a full appreciation for what the business was, how differentiated it was, and the kind of sticky nature of the client relationships that came with it. So we did that investor day in June. At the Goldman conference the December before, Jane really leaned into sort of signaling this is a business you're going to hear us talk more about, calls it the crown jewel of Citi. So there was a slow build up until the day, and then in the couple weeks prior, we worked on a feature story with Justin Bear at the Wall Street Journal, gave him full access to all different leaders within that business, and had a pretty amazing profile.
Was it embargoed for the day?
Embargoed for the day, and had a pretty amazing piece run that morning of. So, I agree, like a lot of the work goes into the preceding of the stories and getting your executives comfortable with doing that ahead of time, because it does pay dividends. It really did sort of set the tone for the day when investors were coming in. My other thought about all of this, and I agree with, you sort of put it all on the table, your executives will almost never be more prepared than they are for that day, right? It's so high stakes.
Yep.
So my philosophy is leverage the heck out of it, because they're so ready, and do as much as you can.
That's such a great point. And I think even after, like, we are still ready.
Yeah.
And I want to keep the momentum going, because we're so prepared. They've got so much information and so much excitement, especially when the reaction is positive. You want to really highlight that for as long as you can.
Jen, how many reporters, or what kind of media presence did you have at your investor day?
I believe there were 8 there for the services, and maybe 10. There were a couple of trades too.
Did you put them in a specific area? Did you let them mingle?
We kept we had a row in the back. We did it at headquarters. We have a nice auditorium, so we're lucky in that way. So they had their own row. We had a lunch after the day, and for investors, each of our executive hosted a different table, which is also, that's a nice way to also involve executives that aren't necessarily presenting, as a side note, and we had them in the room. So we didn't want to make them feel caged off, but we did kind of not try to detract from the real audience of the day with investors.
Other than the CEO and CFO, did you use any other business leaders to talk to media around Investor Day?
Yeah, I mean, all of the heads of each of the heads of the businesses.
On the record?
Yes.
Got it.
Same.
Same thing?
Yeah.
So let's talk about digital. What were your digital strategies? Lauren, do you want to start?
Well, we have LinkedIn as our primary digital channel and then just general web, but we started with some paid campaigns prior leading up that we were having this day with just the press release and some contact cards for different audiences that we were targeting on LinkedIn. And then we have a 2.5, 3-week campaign that's going on now of all of the content. And so we also shared the interviews that we did, the live interviews that were the broadcast.
So you're doing a paid campaign.
We're doing a paid campaign.
Targeting, sending it to institutional investors.
Targeting towards the investor community, correct.
Using content from the Investor Day.
Yep, repurposing as much of that content as we possibly can. And we've got a plan for the next, I would say almost through the end of the year, to take bits and pieces. I mean, our whole day was the presentation, but we had a lot of interactive materials throughout the day. So we had this, the physical visuals, and then we also had a lot of videos with different case studies. So we're taking bits and pieces of all of that content, all the video, all the photography, and we're just repurposing it to continue to tell the story. Almost like the way that the day was organized in the fashion and the order of the presentations, we're taking 2-week chunks of it and repurposing all of that content. So for the next 3 months on LinkedIn, which is our only channel, we're going to continue to tell that story and promote with some paid behind it.
Fantastic. Will, what was your digital strategy?
Ours was similar except for the pre. I mean, we didn't do a lot in advance, and our turnout was strong, and we feel good about where we landed on the day. But so much of the work that now you're in the middle of was really just maximizing as much as we can of the content that we created, trying to get as many cuts as we could, trying to pull out the best performances and feature that across similarly on LinkedIn and paid and targeted as well.
Jen, you worked with a lot of executives with the media. How did you leverage those executives on social channels? What was your digital strategy overall?
I mean, I think basically what the others have said, and the sort of core blocking and tackling. The one tactic I'd mention that is a bit different and that we did what we called man on the street interviews. So when executives came off stage, or there's an executive who runs a big business, and then there are people who run the businesses that are part of that business. After that presentation was over, we had somebody from my own team, like a roving reporter, and doing mini interviews. With the background noise sort of capturing the vibe and the excitement of the day, but asking them a question or two, and then we had a team kind of work, through the night, real time, to turn those into really quick sound.
Through the night,
yeah.
So that they could be released at what time the next day?
They were out by 8 a.m. the next day.
So Jen,
Awesome.
Can I ask a question? Because we considered that, the roving report, or some, from the floor interviews, and we went back and forth, and we were like, well, we ended up not doing it because we didn't want it to distract, and we didn't want it to feel awkward with everyone kind of walking around, and then we have cameras. It was fine. It wasn't.
No, I thought that it had the opposite effect. Like it sort of gave the day, oh, there's a camera.
Right.
Nobody was quite sure who it was.
Right.
So it just
kind of
added to
the
to the vibe and to the excitement of the nature of the event. And again, it gave that sort of next tier of executives a role to play.
Yeah.
And that was maybe what our strategy was around having the trade publication with the camera there. It was like that similar energy, but maybe a safer place for us. I'll tell you a story offline on that. But yeah, no, it worked for us and drove a similar outcome. But that is a very cool idea.
Yeah. It was fun.
So that's clearly an idea for other companies, is this, quote, person on the street camera interviews, whether it's down in the lobby or coming off stage. And you can capture them, you can use it for social, and it creates a little buzz inside of the room.
Well, and Lex, I just thought what Lauren said around the idea of actually landing that pre-interview and taped. I mean, what an accomplishment there, because doing it at the end of the day, what the reporters were, it actually wasn't the reporter who did the interview with us on CNBC, but the host of the show that kind of turned to the reporter in introducing our CEO. The stock that day had gone down, having nothing to do with our investor day, and the introduction was something like, and next up is Greg Case, CEO. Stock is down enormously, hosted its first investor day in 20 years, like really struggling. Don't know why this guy's leading this company now. Over to you, Greg Case from Aon, right? So I think thinking about what the content could be like in those interviews based on where you are in the process is something that Lauren had a nice advantage of. That we were probably thinking a little bit more like you in terms of like, how could we re-message if things hadn't landed on that day?
Yeah, I mean, we had pretty aggressive revenue targets baked into our plan. So it wasn't like, I think we did a lot of pre-work, but we weren't sure. And there was a very careful presentation giving analysts the walk to how we would get there. But that was, how are they going to receive that? Are they going to perceive it as being credible? So that's why we had that thought.
Let's talk about internal employees. Sometimes it's an afterthought. For some companies, they make it a really important part. But Jen, how did you consider employees for yours?
Yeah, I mean, we are lucky in that we were able to host both of ours at our sites.
On site.
On site. We gave, similar to what Will was talking about, we gave a lot of thought to what the whole atmosphere was like. So we have a beautiful town square that leads into our auditorium. Colleagues weren't allowed into the event for obvious reasons, capacity, but we were able to play the Investor Day in a lounge that's sort of off of our main square. We hired an illustrator that did, sort of painted a huge mural on the wall, like think of a word cloud with our key messaging, but that was different. And
so where was that image?
So when you walk into our main square, we have a way that goes into where the auditorium is, and then there's sort of a balcony around that's on a mezzanine. So we had one walking and going into the room.
And you had an illustrator illustrate something based on a word cloud of the content for the Investor Day. How big was that?
Oh, I mean, it must have been 20 by 30.
So that's a cool idea.
That was
for
fun.
Another event.
Yeah, and we can share afterwards, but we have some really good recommendations for people
for the illustrator.
And then we also have a ton of digital signage in our facility. So we had messaging about, that the event was happening, how employees could join and watch. And then after each presentation, that signage changed to have the key messages and the takeaways from that presentation. And then at the end of the day, the same thing happened. So as analysts were coming into the reception, there was signage that were, giving the key recaps from the presentation.
That's a really cool way to share the content with employees.
Yeah.
We actually, I think we need to open up to employee to the audience questions. Any questions from the audience? We have one in the back.
Hi, I'm curious if there's an internal measure where you find your events successful or not. Like, what do you look at after an event and whether you've had a successful event or not?
Maybe two things that we were really excited about was one, I think there were a little over 3,000 attendees listening in on our webcast, and 2,300 of those were colleagues. We're 60,000. And, that is about our largest convening that we don't make people go to, right? That was really a real source of pride for us. And then at the end of the week, having kind of taken a little bit of a breath and gotten our content ready and had the results, we did what a Viva Engage post. So instead of an email out to all colleagues, that's one way. This is a two-way dialogue kind of platform, and we had over 50,000 views of that, which for us is close to our entire global base, and that was a phenomenal bit of content for us. And maybe the last one was we had some commentary, like a really long piece of commentary written by one of our trades that was both very serious but also quite glowing, and the sort of pride that our colleagues took in seeing that, the kind of external internal, was really big. So some internal metrics that were beating metrics we'd seen before, but then don't underestimate the power of the external to the internal.
Well, on that point, one other metric I'd add that we always look at in Investor Days in particular is colleague engagement on LinkedIn, which that's a great reinforcing mechanism.
Yep. I'm very similar. I mean, obviously the IR team's got their metrics with their analysts and all of the coverage that comes with it, and the positive, negative, and we were fortunate to have all positive coverage. Just on the comms side, we did standard measurements with the number of outlets, the reach. I think a lot of the engagement on LinkedIn. We had certain benchmarks that we were looking to achieve. And even I haven't quite gotten the numbers back yet because it was just a few days ago, but am going to look to see what was the percentage of colleagues versus external that had tuned in. So I think that's
You'll also have the measurement of the paid campaign that you're running now. You'll be able to measure the engagement.
Yep, and exactly, and measure it off of post campaigns to see what the differences were. My favorite thing was really the analysis that we did just after with getting the messages repeated back to us. To me, that was any other benchmark, it doesn't matter, but if the people that you had in your audience are repeating back to you the messages that you intended to deliver, almost verbatim in many cases, that was a huge, huge win for us. And we're not a regular household name like my colleagues here, so just a little bit of awareness raised for the organization was a win.
Well, just one other tip. I mean, I thought what I thought you were going to say about AI. I just had a peer from top Fortune 5 company come and talk to us who had just done an investor day, and she said that she did for investor day, she got all the scripts once they were just about ready, put them into their AI tool and said, are the themes coming across? Does anyone not have this point in it? Is this one?
We did that manually.
Okay, yeah. Well, that was her. She said that would have taken me a week.
It was hours. I don't even want to think about the hours and the lost sleep and the number of people that we had to do that. So can you tell me that person's name after, and I'll get that tool?
Yeah, but I hadn't. When I last did Investor Day, we didn't have that option, but I will try and see how it works for the next one.
Other questions in the audience?
Yeah, I was just curious, as you were putting together the communication or the actual presentations during the day itself, was there an ideal order to the presentations? Typically, CEO would start with the overall picture. Then, was there a nice flow that worked? CRO goes next, CMO, client officer. Anything you can share on that front?
I was really pleased with the agenda, the way, and that was the IR team's idea, and the events team, and we were just supporting. But we had the main session with our CEO opening it up, and then we did breakouts. And so we had 4 different breakouts that were 15 minutes each, and the guests did a round robin, so they did 15 minutes for about an hour. Then we came back together. Before that we did our CFO and our COO were part of the presentation. So we had all 3 up on the stage kind of going back and forth. And we have a new CFO, so she's only been with us for a few months, so it was sort of us introducing her as well. But then having the breakouts gave everyone a little bit of a break because you're sitting there for several hours. You get up, you move, you can get some coffee, you go to these different sessions, there's hands-on, there's new people, there's new voices, new energy. And then we came back all together. CEO welcomed everyone back in, did a quick recap, and then opened up the floor with our head of IR for questions. And at that point, everyone still had energy. We still got really phenomenal questions. We did that for 30 minutes or so, and then the CEO closed it out. So really wanted to keep our CEO front and center, but introduce some of the other leaders. And then those breakouts, for me, were perfect, getting people up and out and meeting other leaders of the company.
The breakout, and the word breakouts probably doesn't do it justice. Basically, sort of smaller investor day presentations where 1/4 of the group went to this one, the next quarter of the group went to that one, and then they rotated, so everybody went through each of the 4.
Right.
But you're right, it also did reinforce the 4 themes of those 4 breakouts, which was cool. What about others, Will or Jen, in terms of flow of the agenda?
It's funny, it's something that I could argue probably any which way every time it comes up. To me, the biggest points of discussion for us have been the CFO and where he goes. So the CEO's opening and setting the vision, the guidance on what to update, and then the question becomes, do you then do each of the business components of that plan and that strategy? and have the CEO tie it up with the numbers walk, or let the CEO do that, have the CFO do the numbers, and then all of the business presentations can be much more forward-looking before you kind of close out. A very practical consideration won the day, which was we want investors to stay for the whole thing, and having the CFO at the end helps ensure that that happens.
Ours was very similar to that. I think we have different structures, but we started with our CEO, we ended with our CFO. And he closed it with the key financials. I think it was a similar strategy to try to make sure people stayed. And then we had question and answer period after with more of the leaders that were there.
Yeah, the bigger one, we gave our medium-term guidance in the CEO's presentation in the beginning because that was too big of a thing to leave to the end. But then the whole walk on how you get there and the plan for that was at the end.
Other questions? In the back, one more.
Hi. Throughout the day, it seems as if you guys are all focused on attendance of the investor days and so forth. I'm just curious, I've seen over the years less and less of making conferences available after, like a broker conference available on the website. And I'm just curious, like, why not try to do that in tandem? And because that's your management team interacting with the buy side.
Just to clarify the question.
Yeah.
So just, I know in recent time, I've seen the conference presentations at broker, like a Merrill Lynch conference.
Sell-side conference,
Yeah, exactly. They used to be webcasted and so forth, and you could review it and very few companies are allowing or leave them up anymore.
Yeah.
We've definitely left our.
How long are you planning to leave up the Investor Day webcast archive on your websites?
I don't think we have a plan to take it down. So
Not the investor day, the sell side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just to do it in tandem, I guess is sort of the point.
We do a webcast of the main presentation, and we post a transcript that's up indefinitely, but we don't do the breakout meetings after, which might be your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one remaining question. How many hours of sleep do you think you lost during the week before the Investor Day, Jen?
Oh, I had more hours of awake time than sleep time, that's for sure.
Okay.
One other thing, like what's hell on earth is like that last push, because there's always edits to the very last minute. Yeah. And we're the last line of quality control.
Did
So
you get any sleep the night before? None. Will, any
maybe
sleep
the
the night
question is
before?
what is sleep? But really, here's where I just want to give a ton of credit to the IR team. I mean, they and the support that they had really bared, I think it was maybe a little bit different in terms of our involvement. They did the majority of the work. I think they didn't sleep at all. I think we were there a little bit for quality control. And then as we were kind of watching what had been put together, we were doing things like walking the room and making sure that the presenters on stage were connecting with the audience, like thinking less about, in some cases, the content and more of just refining the performance. So I was definitely having, because, I think this point about all the preparation that goes into it, you can really get inside your head. I mean, these are not all natural presenters who are used to this, and they are feeling very much on display in a unique way. And so kind of going over to them and sort of like a little bit of reassurance and there's a lot of voices coaching them.
Yes.
And so just the chance to go, hey, that was pretty great. And, did anything feel a little off? It's like, well, this felt off. Okay, well, what about trying this strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like just trying to be that helpful coach, because there were others that I think were making sure that it was really like delivered, and so we could be a helpful voice there for them.
I think we're very lucky to have that position.
Yeah.
And definitely don't take it for granted. And I would second you, Will, with the IR team. The relationship that your comms team, events and IR and strategy team have is so crucial, because you are not sleeping. It is high stress. Everything has to be perfect. And you have to have those relationships built and established long before you kind of get into the, before the war starts, right? So I give so much credit to our IR team, and even the coaching just with the IR team. Like, are you all right? Have you had water? Like,
Yeah.
do you need something to eat? What can I get for you? Because you're fully in a support role. These events are magnificent for the
Their day.
organization. It is their day, 100%.
Yeah.
All you can do is screw it up for them if you get bad press, right? So
Yeah.
I think just going in with that mindset that it's 100% your job to support the executives, the CEO, and your IR counterparts is
Yeah, even the little things, like our head of IR is the one that opened the day, and the 2 days before I was like, Jen, let me help you. You
Right.
gotta focus
Yeah.
on you
Right.
for a few
Well
minutes.
said.
Yeah, I think our head of IR was so relieved that he didn't have to open it.
So
One
yeah,
last thing.
sometimes the little touches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a great discussion. Thank you for all the insights. Today we've had fantastic panels. We had a lot of people on the webcast listening in, so thank you for sharing your insights. After we're done here in just a few moments, people are welcome to go up to the penthouse for a cocktail hour. Just go in the elevator, press PH, and then we'll have a drink. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
everyone,
thank you,
for
everybody.
listening.
Pleasure.